Hi everyone, it's Kelly from the Hub. I'm here today with Brittany Mellinger from the Lancaster Housing Opportunity Partnership. Of course, we call that LHOP. We have talked a lot about landlord-tenant stuff along the way, and the last several of our interviews have been talking about different kinds of fair housing. So Brittany thought this one would be helpful to do about how to do the complaint process if you have a fair housing issue. So that sounds fun. Oh, hello. I didn't even say hello to you.
Hi, Kelly.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I am doing well. It's lovely out. It's breezy, and that makes things good. So
yeah,
I'm renting a place in this scenario that we'll just create, and I feel that my landlord is discriminating against me for one of the protected classes that we've talked about before. Let's say he's discriminating against me based on my ethnicity, because that's one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Yeah, or your race, perhaps.
Okay, or my race. Let's use race. It might be easier because it might be easier. So I feel that my landlord is discriminating against me based on my race. Now what?
So we would encourage you to reach out to LHOP. Our role is to ensure that all parties in housing have all of the fair housing information that they need to be able to play their role in ensuring fair housing choice. So we always start from the assumption that, maybe your landlord just doesn't know that what they've done is wrong. So whether that's discriminating on the basis of race, religion, national origin, color, sex, disability, familial status, or age, any of those protected classes, we'd reach out with education first. If that's something that you as the tenant, or as we call in fair housing speak, as the complainant, since you're the one with the complaint. If that's what you as the complainant would want us to do, we would certainly do that, and we'd attempt to see if we can find a solution that's going to work. So say your landlord you felt was giving you different service from all of the other tenants at the apartment complex that were a different race than you. So we would reach out to the landlord, provide some education, see if they might be willing to sit down. We call those informal housing resolutions. They're basically mediations, but they're not binding and they're completely voluntary. We encourage both parties to sit down, have a conversation, and let's see what we can do to work out the issue and find a solution that'll work out for everyone.
Right, because it could be as easy as that. It could be that someone doesn't realize, and not to be mean about it, but not everybody knows everything or is behaving in the way that is helpful to everybody. So to just be able to sit down first and not escalate something up to all the way to 11, but really talk about it at that level where it is, you could solve the problem easily.
Absolutely. And our goal is to help you solve the problem as quickly as we can. We'll go through the complaint process in just a minute, and you'll hear that there are a number of steps, and this takes a while, during which time it could be challenging to have a good landlord-tenant relationship. So we would want to see if we can find the most direct and easy solution that's going to work for both parties. And you're right, Kelly, not everyone knows everything about fair housing. I mean, that's my role, but that's, a lot of folks don't have all of that background knowledge and education. We see this especially around issues of disability. A lot of folks get confused around reasonable accommodations, which we've talked about in the past, what they can and can't do and what they have to do. So if a landlord does have questions, we always recommend that they reach out to us. We don't frame ourselves as like a tenants' rights organization or a tenants' advocacy organization, because we believe that all parties need to have equal access to this information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So the first step is for me to say, hey, Brittany, this is what I think's going on. Can you help me out? And then we could, if everybody wants to, sit together and talk about what the issue is and hopefully reach a solution that way. Okay, so that doesn't work. Now what?
Okay. So say that doesn't work, or say the complainant just isn't interested in that.
Yeah.
You know, they say that bridge is burnt and I just want to file. I just want to let the authorities know. And that's absolutely their right. And we want to support them in that as well. So then we would assist you with filing a fair housing complaint. Now you've got up to a year after the date of the last harm to be able to submit that complaint. So when we talk about the date of the last harm, we're talking, you know, maybe you were given a lease violation or a notice to quit, or even filed against in court for an eviction. That would be a harm that the landlord has done against you. So you would have up to a year after that to be able to file with HUD.
That's a pretty
There's
like
a brief,
long statute of limitations to have. It's not like you have 2 weeks or a month. A year is a long time.
yeah, it sure is. And a lot of times when someone's experiencing housing discrimination, their housing's unstable. They might be needing to find new housing, or they might be afraid of retaliation from their landlord or their property manager. So we let them know that, you know what, it might be the case that you don't feel that now is a good time. Let's get your housing stable, and then reach out to us and we'll help you. You know,
Okay.
You've got that time, so don't feel that pressure.
Excellent.
So there's a brief complaint form that we can assist you with filling out. So if you have any questions about it, you don't understand any of the questions that they're asking, we'll often suggest that you compile a brief narrative, just the dates or the years when things happened, who was involved, just so you have everything written down and you feel that you can tell your story. And we submit that to HUD on your behalf. So after you submit that, then you get contacted by an intake officer who's just going to verify the information that was submitted, may ask for a little bit of additional information, and who's going to prepare that complaint. And then they'll send copies to both the complainant as well as the respondent. So the respondent would be the person that the complainant felt was discriminating against them. So often a landlord or a property manager. So after that, we move on to the investigation phase. So that's where they look into the allegations that the complainant has made. HUD's going to assign one or maybe more investigators to investigate what they said. They may ask you for even more information. So this is where that timeline comes in handy, the contacts, the locations, any other folks that might be able to verify the information that you're submitting, any documentation. And then HUD's going to provide the party whom the complaint has been filed against. They'll give them notice and allow them time to respond to these allegations as well. They've got many ways that they might gather evidence. They might interview folks, request documents. They might go out and inspect the property. But upon concluding that investigation, they'll send you a written report of the findings.
And how long does that take? Like, is that 2 weeks, or could that be 2 years? I mean, like, how long does that take?
It'll really depend on situation by situation. It'll be somewhere in between those two.
Okay.
So usually maybe a month or so.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to be able to judge those kinds of things if you've never gone through it before. So, but knowing that it's not going to, all of this isn't going to happen in a week is really helpful, because then you have to prepare yourself that this is not a process that's going to be, quick in terms of that kind of quickness, but know that it's a process and things take time to progress, literally.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So so the investigation phase is done. Then what happens?
Then there's what's called the conciliation or voluntary compliance. So that's when the investigator would bring both parties together and say, hey, can we resolve this through an agreement? At this point, it's voluntary. No party is required to accept an offer. So this may look different from situation to situation, but examples of what might be agreed upon might be, the person gets to retain their housing or get the housing that they had applied for. There might be some compensation for expenses that the victim had to pay out for. There might be additional training required for the landlord or the property manager to ensure that they are aware of their fair housing obligations and don't commit similar violations in the future. So if both parties are able to come to an agreement, HUD's going to prepare this document for signature, and then they would close out the investigation and just monitor that there's compliance with the agreement, that all of the terms that had been agreed to actually come through.
So this is very similar to how you guys would start the complaint process, as you talked about, in an informal way. This is like a formal version with a person from HUD doing that same sort of thing. Like, here's what I found. Here's your position. Here's your position. Let's create something that makes everybody happy in the middle. Yes, sign. No, the next step, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Good.
So let's say you all give it your best shot, no agreement was reached, then the next step is legal action. So that's where HUD can take actions to enforce the law.
And so they'll have they made a determination after the investigation phase on who was an injured, like whether or not the injured party was correct on their injury? Oh, I'm trying not to use legal words there, but that was complicated. I guess have they said, you know what, you're right, or you know what, you were sort of right, or you know what, you're wrong? Like, have they made that decision yet, or has that not been decided? Like at the voluntary conciliation phase.
So if HUD doesn't believe that there was any probable cause that there was discrimination, if they felt that the complainant's documentation and story just couldn't be substantiated, or they misunderstood, things like that, they may come to a finding of no probable cause. But if they find probable cause that there was a fair housing violation, then they'll go on to pursue legal action on the complainant's behalf.
Okay.
So this could happen two different ways. So this could be a case before HUD's administrative law judges, and that would be handled by HUD's Office of General Counsel, or the complainant could choose, or the respondent could choose, no, I actually want to have this handled as a civil court in federal court, and that would be handled by the U.S. Department of Justice. So in either case, there would be representation for the complainant, either by the Department of Justice or by HUD. But at any time, the complainant is also free to pursue their own counsel as well. That's fine as well.
And that's one of those. This is one of those issues that, if you're familiar with the court system in the local level, this bypasses all that stuff, because the moment you bring up something about a protected class, that becomes a federal issue. So like, if you've ever gone to your district judge for like a moving violation, or something involved, like something easy, like a low kind of easy thing, none of that's going to happen. You go straight up, you bypass all that stuff, you go right to the federal system. So this is, for a huge chunk of people, this is going to be a brand new experience. This isn't, either route you take, administrative or civil, it's going to be a huge adjustment. I got to ask this question because I know people are thinking about this.
Yeah.
Is this expensive?
It'll take some time, but there isn't a cost to the individual.
Okay.
HUD has this program set up as a way to ensure that people's fair housing rights are being protected. So some of that you know, a lot of that happens through my role in outreach and education and providing that information, but sometimes it also has to happen through enforcement, through making sure that folks are held accountable for the actions that they do, just so that everyone has the right to fair housing choice.
Excellent. Thank you. Because I wanted to make sure that people were aware that this isn't cost prohibitive for you to pursue something that is really meaningful and that you feel is a real violation. If the HUD determines that it's not a violation, they'll end that
Mm-hmm.
action before it gets to that level. So, right.
Yeah, but there's also the possibility that it goes to court and then the administrative law judge might say, you know what, nope, it doesn't rise to that level.
Right. Going to court doesn't mean that you win. Both sides.
Right.
Going to court could just mean this case doesn't have enough stuff for us to be able to hear it, which can be very frustrating for people because when you watch TV shows, you go to court and you win.
Yeah, the TV shows are pretty cut and dried and they make it seem like a pretty quick process, so it will take some time. But LHOP's here to support you as well. So if you have questions through the process, we can certainly support you and find out as many answers as we can. But once we submit that complaint, it really is in the hands of the HUD intake officer, then investigator. So yeah, I would encourage you to reach out if you do feel that you have a complaint that you'd like to discuss. I'm always happy to talk with you and to provide that information.
Brittany, this is always helpful. This can be a complicated process, and it's good to know, like I think I've said this probably every time that you and I have gotten together. It's good to know that there's an organization who can help you with fair housing issues. And because it's hard, it can just be hard. So it's good to know that there's somebody who's on the other end of the phone to be able to say, here's my stuff. Is this something that we should pursue? So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kelly.
We'll chat again, everyone. See ya.